Hello, everyone, and welcome to Plugged In with Di and Warren. We are very excited to welcome two guests today, Good Learning Anywhere's own Linda and Clara. They have graciously agreed to join us today to discuss their latest course development, their process, and why this course is important to them. This podcast was created by the team at Good Learning Anywhere, and our theme song is courtesy of bensound.com. We are your hosts, Diane Altinbalek and Warren Butler. Hey, Warren, how are you doing today?
Hey, Di, I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Good. Happy September.
Yes, it's back to school season. It's a little quiet around here. My oldest son is off to university. My youngest son is away at camp. My wife's at the office, and the dog's getting a haircut. So it's nice and quiet today.
And a little lonely.
And a little lonely. It's for the last couple of years, you get used to all the noise when everyone's in the house at the same time. But yeah, it's different for sure.
Yeah, I bet. We had the kids home. We had daycare, but we had the kids home a lot this summer and we had them on a shortened schedule and so forth. And getting used to them being gone from 8:45 in the morning until after 5 o'clock. And it's great because you got the opportunity to really be productive and fill the day with work without having too much of a crunch on the schedule. But at the same time, I really, really miss my little monsters.
Yeah, it's nice just even at lunchtime to sit down together, have lunch, and catch up. So it's just a little different for now.
Yeah, but we'll get used to it. So what else is new?
Well, it's been busy around here for sure. The registration for our fall term is opened up. There's a lot of new courses that we're offering. We're getting a lot of inquiries. We've done quite a few presentations to various different programs right now, and we've got a few other exciting opportunities that are coming down our way too. So it's been quite busy, which is nice. It's a good problem to have.
Yeah, definitely. And as educators, September is go time for us. The summer is a very, very different sort of experience for us. And now we're kind of getting back into what it is that we do. And there's a lot of really, really exciting things coming up. Like you had mentioned, our fall registration's open. We got lots of new courses. We said goodbye to one of our longtime staff members, and we've welcomed one of our other staff members into a new role. We have a sharing circle coming up, which is really, really exciting. And yeah, September rocks. It's exciting times.
Yep. And then end of the month, we have National Day of Truth and Reconciliation as well.
Yeah. So for people who are still not 100% familiar with the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, we used to refer to that as Orange Shirt Day. As of last year, it became recognized as a federal holiday. And I don't know about your area, but there's going to be a lot going on in mine. There's going to be some cultural events and some educational programming that's going to be available to the public. Thunder Bay is very, very keen on showing their solidarity with their orange shirts, so we're going to be painting the town orange. We have a lot of local artists that have created orange shirts for the benefit of fundraising for some Indigenous organizations. And it's heartwarming to see that so many people have embraced it and they are taking truth and reconciliation seriously, even if they're only participating at the wearing an orange shirt level. It's still a start. It's still a really good opportunity for them to sort of like open their minds and sort of embrace learning. And I hope that I see it as a step in the right direction, and I really hope that we kind of continue with that momentum.
Yeah, I think so too. and we've ordered orange shirts for our staff, and yeah, I can share one thing that our supplier that we use has been a a premier supplier for the Orange Shirt Society. And this company McCabe, they donated $500,000 to the Orange Shirt Society. So when we talk about
Oh,
moving in the right direction and creating more awareness, like that company alone sold well over 50,000 t-shirts just by themselves. So I think we're moving in the right direction. There's a lot more work that needs to be done, but it's it's like I said, going in the right direction for sure.
hmm. Yeah, it's awesome to see that people are doing their part, especially organizations that have the ability to donate that kind of money to a really very, very important cause. It's really good to hear about.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So we've got two guests today. So we're gonna start by welcoming Clara back. So Clara is plugged in with Diane Warren's very first repeat guest. So Clara had joined us last year in September, actually, for our episode on the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. And that is still available on our podcast streaming channels and on YouTube if anybody wants to go back and hear more about that from Clara. Clara is not going to be talking about that today. Clara is going to be talking about a new course that she developed with our other guest as her partner, Linda. So, welcome to both of you. Tell us about yourselves.
My name is Clara Corbiere. I'm from Chiking First Nation on Manitoulin Island. My Indigenous name is Strong Hearted Woman. I have been in the teaching profession for 22 years. That was just a realization the other day. One of the things that I have kind of worked on in my years as a teacher is sharing my culture. I was a cultural exchange teacher in the US, in North Carolina, actually. And I went down there and I had a classroom, but I also worked with the teachers and the administrators, just teaching them a little bit more about First Nations cultures. And coming this December, I will have been with Good Learning Anywhere for 10 years, along with Di. And I just really love, I think working with the curriculum and developing courses is absolutely wonderful. And I have to give kudos to Linda because she's the one who approached me with regards to this course. So with that, Linda, I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Thank you, Clara. That's awesome. So my name is Linda Harvey-Rioux, and I've been with Good Learning Anywhere for 5.5 years, and even I can't believe that, to tell you the truth. I'm the mother of 3 and the grandmother to 5 beautiful grandchildren. And apparently this word lifelong learner, I pretty much have the t-shirt for that. I just can't seem to stop doing and learning. This is like career number 3 for me. I began as an art gallery curator, working in an art gallery, working with local artists, and just loved it. Loved it so much I wanted to do more stories about it. So I got into working with CBC in Regina when I was there. And so for 3 years, I did freelance work and contract work with them, where I did stories about teachers, about art, about community, about culture, and some production work. So it was really fun. Then when I moved to Ontario, I went to Teachers College. So back into something new and different, although I'd always been in education when I was working in art. So it wasn't a big surprise, and went to Teachers College and started teaching at the high school level, and was a visual arts and media teacher for several years. I retired, but like I said, that lifelong learner sweatshirt I seem to keep. I found out about Good Learning Anywhere and started going to the sharing circles. And I was just blown away by how interesting it was, and the people who were there, and online learning. And I talk about getting a bug. I just fell in love with online learning, and I fell in love with what GLA was doing. And I kept knocking on doors there, and knock, 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 Linda, can I do something? well, why don't you do this? Why don't you take this Moodle course? Okay, so I got some skills. I learned how to make courses in Moodle. And long story short, they finally hired me. And I was so excited learning online. I just loved it. I remember my very first thing was I did a course online with Michelle Eady, and it was January here in Ontario. And she began the whole thing just like we are today with some video on. And she opened the class. It was freezing cold, 9 o'clock. I'd just driven through a snowstorm, and the camera came on, and it was the picture of an ocean beach. And I went, what is this? What's happening? And she said, well, my name's Michelle Eady, and I'm in Wollongong, Australia. And this is the view out of my office. And I thought, this literally blew my mind. I just couldn't believe, how could anything be so exciting? So here I am at Good Learning Anywhere, loving it, teaching online and trying to develop courses and learn about Indigenous culture.
So we got a lifelong learner that has started to make lifelong learning their profession by promoting lifelong learning for other people. That's awesome. So the two of you, as we mentioned, recently developed a course for Good Learning Anywhere. So if you could tell us more about it, it's called Living Traditions, Connecting Indigenous Values, Food, and Culture. We want to hear all about it.
Clara, why don't I start and tell them how it started? Would that help?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So Clara and I have worked on 3 courses together over the last 5 years. And one of them was called Food for Thought. Another one was called Get a Jump on Healthy Living. And this one. So Food for Thought is a really cool course. It's a short Moodle course. I really loved it. And I said to Clara sometime during the year, what do you think about, wouldn't this make a great live course? Like if we could do this live and add on to it. So that's kind of where it started. And I put in that proposal asking to take this basic course that was a Moodle course, hands-on, fairly short, and turn it into a live course and expand on it. So that's kind of where we started. And then when we got together and talked together, it expanded into something new and different. So I'll let Clara take over from there as to what we did and how we did it.
Okay, so we did a lot of email exchanges. We did a couple of Zoom meetings where we discussed what we wanted this course to look like and what our aim was for it. And one of the things that's really important for the foundation of this course was that as Anishinaabe people, for myself and all of my relations, we have this belief about the natural world. We believe that animals, plants, ourselves as humans, our celestial bodies, the stars, the moon, all have spirits. And we also believe that these are natural forces. So when in our lives, what we try to do is we try to keep all of these things with a balance of some sort. And when we talk about living traditions, we're talking about the spirit of these things within our lives. Again, there's a spirit in everything, within our food that we grow, within the food that we harvest. There is a spirit. And when we are cooking, we thank the Creator for this item that has been given to us. So, for example, if we were harvesting wild meat, so deer hunting in the fall, we would put tobacco down before we start the hunt. And then we would go out, have the hunt, and if we are successful, we put tobacco down again to thank the deer for giving its life so that we can be sustained. So that was a little bit of the premise and the foundation that I started looking at when we developed this course. So I'm just going to get Linda to talk a little bit more about how we connected food for our mind, body, and our soul.
Mm-hmm. So it's this philosophy that Indigenous people have that Clara is the master of in terms of resources that fascinated me. And I just did a course last year called Land and Legends, and the idea being the land and how it's connected to the stories and the whole culture of storytelling. So when we started into this, it was that philosophy that food is sacred, that it's a gift from the Creator, and that food for mind, body, and soul were the things we wanted to connect. So in order to do that, and we're a long ways away from each other, we had to figure out how to do it. And it's not easy, I'm going to say right from the get-go. And we wanted to be in the same room because we've done this before where we wrote a course. And I think, I'm not sure, but Clara, I think it was Get a Jump on Healthy Living that we wrote together. And we've worked together, researching, doing the slides, etc. But then we got together. I got to go to Manitoulin. I got to stay in Chaging. I got to meet some of Clara's family. I got to see the culture. She took us on a tour, and we got to meet some artists. It was amazing. And then we got to sit down together. So we couldn't do that this year. So we tried to figure out what to do. And it was a matter of meeting online, and we did. We met in Zoom so that I could share slides. We could look at each other's slides. It was just a lot easier that way. And we kind of reviewed what we'd been doing. And then we decided who was going to do what for the next week and who was going to do something else. One of the beautiful things was that Clara had a brand new version of PowerPoint. And it was so, and I'm such a graphic junkie, like it's terrible, but if it doesn't look good, but I love it when it looks great. So she took the basic slides I had and she put them into the new version, and she added great graphics and beautiful pictures and stuff like that. So she would do some stuff and then she'd send it to me, and I'd go through it, or vice versa. I would do some work and send it to her, and she would organize the graphics, or we would talk about something and she would add to it. So things like ceremonies, feasting, fasting, and cleansing we cover in this course. Seasonal ceremonies, because we're talking about food and the whole Indigenous practice. Some of the stories, there's some wonderful stories in here, and Clara's idea was to open up with something called the Moose Legend, I believe it's called, if I've got that right. And yeah, it's perfect because it totally tells the story of how food and the creator have made it a gift for humankind. So it's got some beautiful stories in there. So that legend of the moose. So we did back and forth, and she was a great resource for a story that would augment what we were trying to teach as a point. And it just covered so much stuff, so much territory. It was great. So back and forth, literally, we would work, we would talk, okay, you do this, I'll edit that, I'll get it back to you by Wednesday. I would look at it, make some suggestions, vice versa. And we just did that back and forth for the two classes. And the deadline for class number 1 was I think the 2nd or 3rd week of July. And class number 2 was the 1st week of August. It was really a very quick, very, very fast, and hard to do in such a short amount of time. But I think we did a good job there.
Yeah, we had a really short development season this year for some reason. I'm not exactly sure of the reason why, but I took a look at the sample, the slides that you sent me before we came here to record. So I was able to sort of prepare and figure out what questions we were going to ask. And they look fantastic. I think that if I'm available and not teaching myself when this is running, I kind of want to sit in on this and take the course myself. It looked amazing, and food and culture have kind of been a really, really big interest of mine ever since I did my honors year in my undergrad for sociology, because we actually took a food and culture course from the sociological lens. We talked about how important food is for the preservation of history, for the transmission of culture, and so forth, and that food and passing cooking techniques and philosophies regarding food and recipes and stuff like that down is a form of recorded history. And I think that there's a lot of cultures around the world, and Indigenous cultures in Canada have definitely been impacted in a way where this could be true of them as well, where if it wasn't for the food, that circumstances like war and colonialism and stuff like that have impacted populations and impacted the ability for people to practice their cultures and everything. If it wasn't for food, we may have actually lost a lot more. So I really, really appreciate what you've done here with this build. And I was just blown away by the quality of the work that you two had done, the richness of the information on it. I'm really, really excited to see how this is received when you guys run it. It's going to be amazing.
So I think it's time to tell you the story about the recipe book. So Clara, I think you should tell her. First of all, we're talking about recipes and what should we do, and what are we going to do for because we wanted partially. I forgot. So we wanted a section to be hands-on. So one time when we were talking somewhere around the end of July, Clara says, "My mother said, I found this cookbook. Would you like to see it?" So you tell her the rest of it. It's such a great story.
So one of the things that I often do when I'm developing curriculum is I speak to my parents. They're both elders within the community. My mother attended residential school, whereas my father didn't. And they're about the same age. And the reason my father didn't attend was because he was working out in the bush when the Indian agent came around and started collecting the children to go to residential school. So my mom hasn't had as much of our culture as my father has. My father, when he was younger, would help one of the elder ladies who lived not too far from them. And he would go with her, and he would go and help her with, say, chopping wood or working in the garden, picking medicines, all of that kind of stuff that's kind of handed down. And my mother didn't have that, which was not really shocking to me. But one of the things that when we were discussing this at the kitchen table was that my grandmother, Clara, who I'm named after, had also attended residential school. But she had, for some reason, been able to keep many of the cultural traditions alive. And my mom says, I've got something that I think is going to be fabulous for you. Maybe you'll be able to use it. So she pulled out these two cookbooks. The first cookbook is one that was bound with a piece of leather and had birch bark as the cover on the back. And I opened that up, and there was just like so much traditional recipes within it. And I shared it with Linda, and I said, this blows me away that this is even available to us. So I shared that with her. And then the second one is, it's just kind of bound in like a duotang type of cover. But the recipes in there, I was telling Linda about, we've got beaver recipes. We've got recipes for different types of rabbit. And one of the recipe titles for the rabbit was Himalayan rabbit. And I thought, Himalayan rabbit, that's not something from our culture. And what it was a sort of a joke on on playing with the title. So what it was, so what kind of rabbit are you going to have for supper? Oh, we're having Himalayan rabbit. Himalayan rabbit. Yeah, I found Himalayan on the road. So there were all these different types of recipes with these little funny titles. And then another recipe was cottontail stew. So it's just like, and one of the things that, with the beaver recipe that I was telling Linda was that I remember as a child having beaver as one of our meals. And this was when I would say I was about 4, and this is one of my earliest memories. At that time, my mother wasn't really used to cooking wild meat or anything like that. Again, remember, she was in residential school, so she missed out on a lot of that stuff. So Dad had brought home a beaver, and so she cleaned it and dressed it, and she cooked it. But she cooked it inside the house. And one of the things about cooking beaver is it stinks. It smells horrible. So one of the things when they're cooking the beaver is they always cook it outside because it smells so bad. But from what I remember, the beaver was delicious, but it smelled horrendous. So we have, within the course, we have shared some of those recipes. I think it's just absolutely fabulous that my mother had those books, that they were passed on from my grandmother. And I would love to be able to share these recipes with everyone, because they are so wonderful. I also shared with Linda about, again, as I was growing up, when the family would gather at my Aunt Ellen's house, and she would send the boys to the local lake, the lake that was nearby, and the boys would go swimming and they would collect clams, and she would make this clam chowder out of freshwater clams. And the other one was fish head soup. Now, when I mention that to a lot of people, they're kind of like, ew, that's disgusting. But one of the delicacies of the fish head soup is actually the eyeballs and then the cheeks of the fish. So within the course, you see a picture of my son and my grandson. I asked my son to take me fishing, and I don't know what it is, but every time he takes me fishing, I drop the line and hook a fish right away. That day, I caught 7 largemouth bass, and I got to witness my grandson, Constantine, who is just 4 years old, he just turned 4, catch his first fish. So it was so exciting being able to see that with him, to be able to spend time with both my son and my grandson, fishing and talking and just catching up and just spending time. So when my son, I don't clean fish. That's one thing I don't do. Baiting the hook, I have no problem. Taking the fish off the hook, no problem. But I do not clean the fish. And everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. So my son was cleaning the fish, and I told him, I said, I want to keep the fish skeleton with the heads and the head and the spine and everything else. He's like, oh, why? What are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to try to emulate Auntie Cubbity's. That's my Aunt Ellen. We called her Cubbity. I'm going to try to emulate her fish head soup and see how it turns out. Well, it was absolutely delicious. And for the first time, I tried the eyeballs. Just having to get over that idea that it was an eyeball was very difficult for me. But once I ate it, now I fully understand why the elders enjoyed the cheeks and the eyeballs of the fish. So that was my experience with the fishing and with the fish head soup. There's just so much, and we could have actually turned this course into a much longer course.
Yeah, we've jammed a lot of stuff into it for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
Okay, you've made me think of one of the things that I found really amazing and so wonderful about this course is that when we're doing live courses, we're always looking for photos, and there's usually very little, or you have to use stock photos all the time, and there's very little that's Indigenous. Anyway, long story short, we were so fortunate this time around that Clara took photos. She took photos when she was fishing. She took photos of her grandson eating corn. She took photos of her dad picking berries. So all those pictures that we put in there are all real photos about the topics that we were doing. So berry picking, because the choice that we picked here, and that was Claire's idea too, was to do a wild rice and berry soup as the hands-on thing. And the other thing was that Di, you had been already doing things to create some stock photos for us. at GLA. And so we've got a cleansing section, we've got a fasting section. So we used a lot of Di's photos that you had made too. So there was so many great photos that we got to use that came from Di and that came from Clara in here, that with people in them too, you know, doing the things and to augment some of the topics that we had about wild foods and etc. So that was a real wonderful thing, I think, that went into this course.
Yeah, building the photo bank has been a really, really slow process, but I'm really happy to do it, and I'm really happy to see the contribution that other people have made to our Basecamp folder, where we've seen some actual Indigenous representation. Because photos, getting royalty-free photos that are culturally appropriate for our course developments has probably been one of the biggest challenges that course developers have consistently faced. So I was really, really happy to see that they were useful, that you guys were able to put them to work.
Yeah.
Like those,
Yes.
like the one that you put for cleansing, I saw that you used one of my smudge photos because
Yeah.
I was having a really, really hard day where I was having a really, really hard time focusing, and there was a lot of stuff that was mentally taxing going on. It was like, okay, I am going to take a half-hour break and I am going to go outside and I am going to smudge. And I smudged myself. I smudged the entire east side of the house and everything. And then I was looking at my stuff and it was just like, I really like sort of artfully arranging things to sort of put myself at peace before I smudge. And then I was looking at it, was like, I'm going to get some photos of this because this might be useful. And now they've been used in two separate courses now. So I'm really, really
Beautiful.
glad that I actually had the presence of mind to remember to snap a photo of my setup.
Yeah, no, it was beautiful, and I think we used that and some of the Three Sisters soup. And there are photos out there of Three Sisters soup. I've found things because I used them last year, but yours were great, and we used those ones too. And then the ones from that Clara was able to get of her family, you know, which is, you can't get better than that. It was great.
Yeah, it looks amazing. Like I said, like visually it's a gorgeous course, and informationally it's very, very rich. And I really hope that everybody listening to this goes and signs up for it, because you're definitely in for a treat with some of this content. So you mentioned the wild rice and berry soup. So you included that as a live cooking lesson, right?
We did, and
How are you
Clara,
going to execute that?
oh, talk to Clara. She's got a plan.
Oh, it's really it's kind of funny actually, because the soup was actually made during the first time I was introduced to the soup was when I had taken my grandchildren, my oldest grandchildren, Dylan, who is now 18, and Zagoskia, who is now 15, to a winter camp. And so we're out on the land, and the cook who was there said that they were going to make some berry soup. And so we were wondering like what berry soup is. When you think of berries, you think of desserts. You think of something very sweet. But the surprise to this recipe is the wild rice. So we thought that it would be a wonderful idea to have a live section to this class. And the plan is that within the second class, the second half of class 2, we are going to have a live demonstration. Now, the one thing I'm having an issue with right now, I do have a backup cook who is willing to do it for us, but I wanted to get one of the cooks who was used to making this, that it's part of their tradition in making this soup, but it's also around ceremony time. So with the ceremonies, a lot of our cooks, our traditional cooks, will be working during ceremony, because the feast is a very big part of the ceremonies that we attend. So we didn't know when the class was going to be offered, like the date. We didn't know whether it was going to be in the morning or the afternoon. We have since gotten that information, and I have reached out to our cooks. So I'm still waiting to hear back. But again, I said I have a backup cook who's willing to do it, my mother. So we're just waiting to hear back from the other cooks to ensure that they have time to present this recipe live. And we're really hoping that those who are in the class will be able to follow along. So that was one of the great things that we thought, based upon our previous sharing circle with Candace. So we're hoping it's going to be as great as Candace's workshops have been.
That's awesome. I'm really excited for that. And, you're right. Candace's last sharing circle went really, really well. So that was January 2021. And we're really, really excited because she's actually coming back for this month's sharing circle, which is going to be on Monday. So for those of you who are listening, when we roll this out early, it's actually going to be this coming Monday, September 19th. And, no spoilers. We're going to wait until we actually get the ingredient list so we can confirm that this is the recipe that we're going to be doing. But she is going to be making a couple of dishes with us. And for those who are interested in taking this course, that might be a good dry run to see how well you follow along with a live cooking session. So we encourage people to sign up for that. Join us for it. Candace is a wonderful cook and a wonderful teacher as well. I had always loved Three Sisters Soup, which was the recipe that she taught us to make last time, and didn't quite have a handle on a good recipe, and hers was so easy to follow and made such a beautiful soup that I've actually made it on a regular basis now, following her recipe. And now that I've actually seen what she was able to do with it, I've actually been able to make some adjustments to it to make it my own as well. So we definitely encourage people to come out and check out that sharing circle. So which one of you is going to be teaching it this term? Clara?
I am teaching it, and it is starting on November 23rd. It is an afternoon class, so we'll be starting at 1:30. And Linda is my backup instructor, but I'm wondering if Linda, I haven't approached her about it, put her on the spot here now. I would love to be able to team teach this class. So to have Linda there with me.
Yeah, and I know, and you know what? I think the 23rd I can. I know I talked to Sue about trying to move it because the 30th I can't do it at all. So I know, and I asked her if we could move just the date, but it didn't seem to be possible. But the 23rd, I think I could be there.
Absolutely wonderful.
It's
That's
interesting. We're talking about all these great things, and there's certain themes that seem to resonate out of the conversations this morning, and there's a lot of sharing going on, like when it comes to recipes and a lot of pictures, but even just collaborating on developing the course and having all these great ideas and bringing them together. It's pretty neat.
It's amazing. We've got a really, really good team for that here at Good Learning Anywhere. And a lot of us have been together for a long time. And, it's been very, very special with how we've been cultivating relationships and how we've been able to do that with all of us being spread out at such a huge distance and everything. So being able to share is really, really important for our team. And I think that this is a really, really good example of what we can turn out by sharing with each other in such meaningful ways.
It's funny. So last night, my wife had a coworker and her husband over for dinner, and they're only in Canada for 6 months. So the end of the month, they go back to Romania. And so they were here and made dinner and invited them over and learned all kinds of great things about Romania and their culture and, just how that country's evolved and, has gone through so much. And so we're eating and they're like, wow, this is great. I think it was a salad. And they're like, oh, I got to get the recipe. And my first instinct was, well, that's a family recipe. Like it's a family top secret recipe. And I'm thinking it is, but if people like it and enjoy it, we need to be sharing more of those things. So it's just interesting, like on so many different levels, there's even more sharing that we can do. Like we still have a lot of work to do in those areas.
I just want to tell you that, when what happened a couple of years ago when I got the opportunity to go to Manitoulin was the result of two courses we were working on. One was the Woodland Artists course that Nida was working on that I was sort of involved in. And the other one was this course, Get a Jump in Healthy Living, that I was working on with Clara. And we asked Linda, right, if we could go up there to research some of the woodland artist thing and experience it. So, and she said yes. And boy, I can't begin to tell you what a huge bonus that was experientially for us to be able to do that all together. And Clara put this tour together for us where we went and visited a couple of artists whose work was incredible. We went to Wikwemikong, which I'd never been to Manitoulin personally, I hadn't, but we also got to go to Wikwemikong. She toured us around. And I got to meet her family. It was just, and we got to stay in Chiking. That was a huge bonus. I couldn't, never had that experience before. And then we got to work together. And then I think the pièce de résistance of the whole thing was that her daughter, Kat, this is Clara's daughter, gave us a workshop on woodland art and artists. And it was just incredible. So we walked away, the two of us walked away with this incredible cultural experience that went into the two courses that we were working on and designing. So, and that's, kudos to Linda Wright and to GLA for giving us teachers that support in terms of writing these courses. It was really wonderful.
That does sound like a really wonderful opportunity.
Yeah, it was absolutely, I really enjoyed it because I got to share a lot of what we do here on Manitoulin, share the culture. One of the things that I really enjoyed was that when I introduced Nida and Linda to my father was already in the garden. So he was working in the garden, and we were just talking to Linda and Nida about the garden and things there. My father has had a huge garden ever since I could remember. I remember growing up being so angry because we had to be in the garden weeding or hoeing or doing something in the garden while all of our friends were riding by on their bicycles. And my sister said, you know what? I felt the same way. But now we all work together. My parents are getting up there in age, so we are all out there planting, we're out there weeding, we're out there doing the harvest. We'll be harvesting the potatoes pretty soon. But when Linda and Nida were there, my dad's talking to them about the garden. And I just absolutely loved how Nida just bent down and retrieved a bean off of one of the bean plants. And she just ate it right there. And that's one of the absolute wonderful things that I remember doing as growing up as well. If we needed a snack during the day, we'd just go and raid the garden. So we talk about community gardens, and we talk about, there's a story within the second class about Art McGregor talking about how important the community garden was. But I think giving Linda and Nida the opportunity to come and experience all of this, I think that was such a big bonus. And yes, miigwech to Good Learning Anywhere, and to Linda for Linda Wright for giving NIDA and Linda the opportunity to come and spend some time on Manitoulin with me.
It was huge.
It's so neat, eh? So it just goes to show you that a lot of times when we're working on courses and coming up with different ideas, sometimes you can only do so much online. Like we have all the tools, we have all the resources, you know, there's Zoom, we have all the technologies that are there, but sometimes you just have to, it needs to be done in person. Like there's just needs to be a fine balance between working offline and online for sure.
Yeah, it was wonderful. It was just an amazing bonus.
Awesome. So, is there anything that we missed in this conversation that you would like the people who are interested in this course to know?
There's just one little thing I'd like to add, and then I'll, and Clara, if you've got something too, but one of the things in the Food for Thought course is that we dealt with people who don't live on the land and people who are, I'm going to say, more like my life, where I have to go shopping in a grocery store. And, you know, knowing the background of all of this, like that was the cornerstone of this course. But we do talk about food security, food sovereignty, but we talk about community gardens. And there's as Clara just said, there's an elder who talks about it. And then we bring it right back home to supermarkets and how a supermarket's organized, how you shop in it, what an end cap is, how they try to get your attention, etc. So we just tried to bring all of this incredible, you know, food is sacred, living traditions and values back home to anybody who eats anything, and how 90% of us have to go and buy food at a grocery store. And I think that's a huge bonus of this course too, just the fact that we tried to pull it all back to everybody. You know, I need some bread. Where am I going? Off to the Metro or off to whatever grocery store. And we just tried to make that a part of this course too for everyone. So I don't know, Clara, anything you'd add?
I agree with you. Bringing it back to the supermarket is really a bonus for everyone, because we do offer the alternatives for those who don't live on the land or those who don't have a garden. But when we also talk about the community gardens, we suggest for people to take a look within the community that they are in. A lot of the cities or towns are now offering little plots of land where you could go and plant a few rows of something. You just have to find out from the municipality where it is, when it's open, and oftentimes these are free. So you can have a little section of land for free to grow something that you may want. Just absolutely. I think there's so much wonderful information in this course. And I really enjoyed working with Linda again to bring this all together. And while we had that short little window, we managed to bring it all and tried to share as much as we could within the two classes. And I think if anybody listening, I invite you to come and register. I think you will enjoy this class very much. Miigwech.
All right. So, Warren, any final thoughts before we start wrapping up?
Yeah, you know, one final thought from me is, you know, we offer a lot of different courses, and some I would say are probably more mainstream, like your math and your reading and your writing. But I think there's a large number of courses that we offer that are just based on real life, and it's real life stories, it's real life pictures. I don't know, it's just that hands-on, the things that maybe you don't learn in a book, so to speak. And I find this course fits in that area where, you know, by signing up for this course, this isn't anything that you're really probably going to learn out of a mainstream textbook. So I think it just makes it that much more special and unique. So, you know, I'd encourage programs to take a look at it. You know, if programs aren't sure about it, you know, they can always sign up and audit for themselves as an instructor before signing up any learners. That's always available. But I certainly think it's worth taking a close look at. It's something different than I think what you'll find anywhere else out there.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. It's not something that you're going to find in a mainstream school or a college or anything like that. It's not something that you can really readily learn out of a textbook, but it's also interesting how the skills are still really, really important to a lot of things that you wouldn't necessarily readily associate. Like, you're still going to have skills that you take away from this, like interpersonal interaction, cultural competency, time management, and how you handle your learning with the course and everything too. So even though the course doesn't seem like it's going to be like your most traditional delivery of a course, like when we think about mainstream education, it doesn't mean that the learning in it isn't going to have things that are valuable to mainstream education and mainstream employability and everything. And that's one of the things that's really beautiful about the creativity of some of our course developers here at Good Learning Anywhere, our approach to incorporating the traditional, more like traditional ways of knowing and things like that into something that's supposed to prepare people for a more colonial and mainstream world. I think that we do a pretty good job, and I'm really, really proud of our team for how we manage to find that balance and how we can creatively find ways to teach those skills in ways that don't involve textbook learning.
No, very true.
All right. So we brought this up already a couple times, but I'm going to bring it up again just to sort of drive it home. This Monday, September 19th, we have a sharing circle coming up with Candace from Candace's Catering. And stay tuned, follow us on Facebook, keep an eye out for the ingredient list for the recipe that we're going to be making. She is going to be doing a live cooking demonstration, sharing a recipe or two with us, depending on what we have time for. And we're really, really excited to have her back because of how well it went the first time and what a valuable experience we all got from learning with Candace about food before. And we love how the timing of this podcast worked out and how we're actually able to promote that, because the two go hand in hand. And if you want a dry run on how to participate in a live cooking lesson before you take Living Traditions, Connecting Indigenous Values, Food and Culture, this is a really, really good opportunity for that. That is open to anybody who wants to join. Registration is free. You can follow us on Facebook to get the guest link to our Zoom session, or you can register with us. You can go to goodlearninganywhere.com/register to sign up for the sharing circle or to sign up for any of our wonderful courses that are coming up. If you're interested in other forms of Indigenous cultural learning, we have a massive catalog with opportunities for that. We have recently done some updates on our Exploring First Nations courses. And so those have a whole new look to them. We have a number of different Moodle courses like Indigenous People of Canada. Food for Thought is kind of like a mini version covering some of the same topic, which is a really, really good way to sort of get familiar and get prepared if you want to take Living Traditions when it comes up in November. We have a brand new Exploring Indigenous Innovation and Technology course, which is going to take a historical look at some Indigenous contributions to technology that we know today through traditional Indigenous knowledge. So lots of really, really great opportunities for those coming up, and much, much more. So again, like us, follow us, email our info line. That's info@shlc.ca. And of course, all of our information is up on our website. Again, that's goodlearninganywhere.com. Another thing, September 30th is the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. So please get onto Google, get onto your social media, identify those Indigenous artists and Indigenous owned businesses, and Indigenous-centered fundraisers to accumulate your orange shirts and show your solidarity. Check out your community calendars and so forth and see what kind of educational or cultural events are coming up. If you are dealing with trauma or know somebody who is dealing with trauma related to survival or intergenerational trauma caused by the Indian residential school system, there is a hotline here that is run by the Indian Residential School Survivors Society. It is 1-800-721-0066, and they are available to help with any crisis that is relating to these issues. They're available 24 hours a day. And for more information about their programming, you can go to irsss.ca. To see what else they offer. That's about it for us. Thank you, everybody, for plugging in with us once again. And a very, very big thank you to Linda and Clara for joining us, for sharing with us about their process for coming up with this course and sharing some information about it. We're really, really excited to have this running along with all of our other new courses that are coming up. And we will be back in another month or so with another episode. Warren, that's it for me. Anything else from you?
No, I think you covered everything. We've got an exciting couple of months that are coming up. If you have any questions, like Di said, certainly reach out to us. We'll do the best to answer your questions as best we can. It's going to get quite busy, but we're very excited and we're prepared and we're all set to go. So thanks again, Clara and Linda, for joining us. It was great to chat with you guys again. And we're looking forward to a positive fall semester.
Awesome. And if anybody has any questions or any feedback that they want to send us about this podcast, please feel free to email me, Diane, that's DIANE at shlc.ca. And we will see you all again very soon. Stay safe, stay happy, and enjoy your September.